Hello, my name is Giselle McIntyre, and I'd like you to come on a journey with me. I'd like to start by honoring all of the women in the room. Each of you has navigated unique paths, overcome countless obstacles, and shown up today despite millions of other things that are demanding your attention. That in itself deserves recognition. Now, let me ask you a question. How often do you give yourself permission to feel a certain way? I want you to think about something where you felt energized, where you felt in the moment, full of energy, as if time stood still, as if you were in flow. When last did you feel like that? Take a moment and think about it. Do you give yourself permission to feel like that often? If you're like most of the women I coach, the answer might be not often enough. We're so busy taking care of everyone else, our teams, our families, our communities, that we very often forget to check our own internal compass. We navigate by everybody else's North Star, wondering why we feel lost. That feeling of engagement, that spark you remembered, it isn't random. It's often a sign you're using your strengths. And here's what 25 years of coaching has taught me. When women understand and leverage their strengths, they don't just succeed, they transform and transcend entire organizations, families, relationships, and communities. So let's start the journey. I spent a quarter of a century helping people discover their strengths, and it comes from my own journey of discovering and understanding of not always only wanting someone to feel okay, from terrible to okay, but rather to go the extra way, to be more, to transcend into something that really makes you feel alive, that allows you to flourish and thrive. So I remember as a young woman sitting in boardrooms, sitting with people who were very often much older than me and a lot of male dominant environments, and not wanting to give an idea that I had, not wanting to interrupt the flow of everyone's rather boring conversations very often. I never felt as if I really had the right to give my opinion. It took years to get to a point of understanding that my difference of opinion was not wrong, but different. And the difference is something that we can celebrate. Does this sound familiar? It wasn't until I discovered strengths based coaching itself and all of the tools that you can use within that that I started to build the courage, the backbone to be able to give my opinion. And wonder upon wonder, it actually worked. It actually made people feel like I had something important to say. And very often, my ideas became the good business sense that was needed. In strengths based coaching, we believe that each of us have a unique internal compass that is made up of our natural talents, our values, and our passions. And when you use and refine your compass, your own compass, you move towards a greater engagement and a purpose of life and work. So many people are wondering what the meaning or purpose of their life is. It's not really a secret. You already know. I like steps, so I'm going to take you through a few steps. Step one is that you need to discover your true north, or what we're talking about now is your strengths. So our journey begins with a rather radical self awareness. And I say radical because women truly knowing and owning our strengths can feel a little revolutionary. And perhaps that's what it's about. It's time to step up. Research shows that women are socialized from a very young age to focus on our weaknesses. We're taught how to be modest, to deflect compliments, to say, oh, it's nothing, or I'm so glad I could help when we achieve something remarkable. A Harvard Business Review study found that women consistently rate themselves lower in performance reviews than their male colleagues, even when actually their performances are identical or in some cases even superior. It's time for us to stop that. So let's start by redefining strengths itself. Strengths are not just things we're good at. In fact, you could be very good at something and absolutely hate doing it. So the idea is that you need to think about activities that you're not only good at, but that energize you, that give you that little zzzt when you're busy with them. That is a strength. And it's those moments that we need to not lose track of, because that is what creates our flow. So let's do a quick exercise. I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and think back in a time in the last month or so when you felt completely energized, or where time stood still in something that you were doing. It can be anything, really. A few examples, in case closing your eyes is making you want to sleep because you're tired. It could be when you were mentoring someone. It could be solving a complex problem. It could be bringing people together to collaborate in something meaningful. It could be standing up for something you believe in. All right, open your eyes. So think about what you remembered now, and specifically think about how you felt. This is a great way to figure out what your strengths are. There are a few that are common, more so to women than to men, and that would be things like relational intelligence, the idea of being able to read a room, being able to understand an unspoken dynamic, and to build bridges between people. Holistic thinking, which we naturally do by seeing connections and being able to consider multiple perspectives simultaneously. Intuitive decision making, and never put this one down. We can integrate data with instinct in powerful ways. Instinct is not some kind of magical power. It actually is that we are integrating data at a very fast pace in our wonderful female brain. Empathetic leadership, we're able to create psychological safety that allows teams and people around us to thrive. But here's the challenge. These strengths are often undervalued in traditional corporate settings. They're dismissed as soft skills, when in reality, they are the skills that make organizations human, that make organizations innovative, and ultimately that make organizations sustainable. So ask yourself, what activities make me feel most alive and energized? And perhaps take a moment to write them down if you have a piece of paper and a pen handy. When do I feel flow? When do I feel as if I've lost track of time and I'm busy with something and I look up and a half an hour has gone? And I'm not particularly talking about TikTok. What feels effortless to me? As if it's just simple and easy, when you realize that it's actually quite difficult for other people to do. And what have I felt most proud about in terms of my natural approach? Take note of these patterns, because these are the guideposts that you can use. You don't, however, have to try and guess it. There are lots of tools, my favorite being the Engagement Fit tool, which I use in my own personal coaching. But there are other tools like the VIA Character Strengths, which is where it really all started, and Gallup's Clifton Strengths, which also validate what your strengths are and allow you to listen to yourself in terms of what it is that makes you tick, gives you energy, and allows you into those moments of flow. Just remember that a strength can also create a barrier for you. For example, if you are deeply authentic, you would in certain environments find it very difficult to work, where you are ultimately being told to bend the truth ever so slightly all the time. And that is something that you need to be aware of. So choosing an environment where you need to act or be inauthentic when you have a strength of authenticity can become a real barrier for you. And it is very difficult to flourish in those kind of environments. So be careful to make sure that you really understand what your strengths are, and also then where there could possibly be a barrier for you. Kindness is a beautiful strength. But let's face it, kindness can be taken for granted. Kindness can be used by people who are maybe not kind. So it is important for us to have a better understanding, firstly, of our strengths, how to utilize them and fly with them, but also where they can be a barrier so that we can manage those risks as well. For women, clarifying your values can also be particularly challenging because we're often absorbed in everybody else's expectations. We've been taught to value what we should value. Climbing the ladder, having it all, being mother of the year, leaning in, without asking if these align with what actually matters to us. And I think this is what's important for me when we move into step 2, which is to clarify what matters for you. Your values are important because once you figured out what your strengths are, you are then going to start talking about your values. So the strengths are basically the beginning of your compass, but your values are the why. And the why is important because that is where purpose lives. So once you know what your strengths are, what energizes you, and you know why, because of the values, you will ultimately have realized what your purpose is. The intersection between the two is where purpose lies. So let me tell you a story. One of my clients, let's call her Sarah, was a brilliant marketing director who felt consistently and exhausted. She was succeeding in every external measurement, doing very well in her job, had a great salary, had been given a promotion upon promotion, but she felt very empty inside. We explored her values and we discovered that creativity and flexibility, obviously, being in marketing, were core to who she was. The problem was that as she'd been promoted into her role, her job had become more about spreadsheets and rigid processes. It's not that she was failing, it's that she was succeeding in the wrong things. And this is important to recognize. Some of the common values that I've found in women that I coach are things like an authentic connection. Chit-chat is fine, but ultimately networking on its own is not good enough. We really do want to build genuine relationships. Having a meaningful impact. And remember, your sense of what meaningful is very unique. So don't make assumptions that someone else's meaningful impact is the same as yours. So not just about hitting targets and reaching, deadlines and things like that, but also connected to being able to make a real difference in whatever it is we're doing. Growth and learning. For many years, I believed that everybody wanted to learn and everybody wanted to grow. Through the years, I've learned that some people are okay and are quite happy with where they are at that moment. But ultimately, the saying that if you don't grow, you die is true. We do have to grow. It's just what we want to grow in that becomes unique when you are aware of your own internal compass. Creative expression means that we can produce something that's innovative, but more importantly, that has purpose. Community and collaboration are values that are not just about leading or doing something important or having a title, but also about lifting others up and about paying it forward. And that is a challenge I would like to give you. Each one of you listening to this, pay forward what you have to offer. Pay forward what your strengths are. Because for some other women somewhere else, this will be a great, great help. It's important to feel proud and aligned. And this is what happens when you are fulfilled. So for a moment, I'd like to ask you to think. What is it that I am doing? And think about the answer that you give yourself. Next question. Who am I being? Next question. What makes a moment meaningful for me? Important question. Have my values been honored? And I'm including honored by yourself. Now let's think about 3 moments of frustration or anger and times when you felt as if something was fundamentally wrong. I'd like you to ask yourself questions about it. So I'll give you a moment just to think about something where you felt very frustrated or angry. First question, what do you think your values were that were being violated? Think about it a bit. What was missing that mattered to you? And what do you need to do to get what you were not getting in the situation? Our values often reveal themselves more clearly in moments where there is a misalignment rather than when everything is aligned. So remember, the next time you feel angry or frustrated, ask yourself, what is it that is not in alignment with who I authentically am? For women especially, I want to address something important. Your values are allowed to evolve. It's important that you understand that what you valued and who you were in your 20s is highly unlikely to be what and who you value when you're in your 40s or 60s or 80s. And this does not mean that you are changing or being inconsistent to a point of some kind of problem. It actually means that you are growing. Also, your values don't have to look like anyone else's. It is your value that rests in your culture, that rests within your life's hustle and bustle, that is important. So if your value is to stay in on a Saturday night and rest and read, whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean you're being antisocial. It means that's what's important to you at this point. It doesn't mean when you don't want to take part in every competition around anymore that you are no longer competitive. It might simply mean that you don't have something to prove. So think about your life clearly and honestly with yourself. Step 3, align and act. So use your daily compass. So now you have the components of your compass. You have your strengths, which point the way, your values, which are your true north. But a compass is only useful if you follow it. If you don't use it, if you leave it in the bag, then you're still going to walk miles and not know where you are. So the magic happens when you use it. And this is unfortunately where most of us get stuck. Why? Because we very often are navigating systems that weren't designed for us. We're very often trying to use our compass in territories that are mapped by others. But here's what I've learned. We don't need to wait for the world to change. We can start navigating by our own compass today. This isn't about reinventing your life overnight. It's about what I call micro alignments, small intentional shifts that honor your strengths and your values. So here's a few examples. At work, I challenge you to start speaking up in meetings when your intuition flags something that others maybe are not seeing. Propose collaborative solutions when everyone else is trying to compete with each other. Create space for relationship building, not just for task completion. Set boundaries that protect your energy for what matters most. Volunteer for projects that use your strengths, not to fill gaps. And mentor others in a way that energizes rather than drains you. In your leadership position, lead with empathy and don't apologize for it. Empathy is part of emotional intelligence, and as most researchers will now tell you, with surprising effect, that emotional intelligence is actually the way leaders are supposed to be leading. Haha, we've known it all along. Bring your whole self to work. Be authentic. Be real. Don't only have certain parts that you consider to be professional. Redefine who you are as a human being and as a woman, and then act it. Be yourself. Measure success not in metrics, but in meaning, and that includes in leading your teams. People actually want to know why we need to do something, not just what we need to do. And model the integration of strength and softness, power and compassion. It's something we all need to learn to do. And in life itself, very importantly, say yes to opportunities that align with your values. Say no without guilt when something doesn't serve your purpose. Set that boundary. You'll thank me later. Invest time in relationships that energize you. And as you grow older, you'll realize that those draining relationships are not worth the time and effort. Create rituals that honor your need for reflection and renewal. And I'm not necessarily only talking about a meditation session and yoga. Find something that becomes part of your traditions and your rituals that allows you to spend a few moments every day thinking about where you are and what you are and what it is you want to do and what is important. The Japanese have the beautiful tradition or ritual of tea making, and perhaps that's something you can go and have a look at. Not all of us like tea, but it is a good example. Pursuing growth in areas that fascinate you, not just because you should be doing something, but because it fascinates you, is something that we should all be challenged to do. And then, most important, celebrate your wins. Even if it's a mini win, a mini alignment, celebrate it. Let me give you a practical example. Let's call her Mary, a CFO that I coached, realized that her strength was in seeing patterns and connections. We're very good. Patterns and connections that a lot of others were missing. And her value was sustainable growth, which is a great thing to put in an interview and a CV, but it's not always something that people realize is not just about business, but is about people as well. So she started hosting some connection sessions where the finance team would meet with other departments and try and understand each other's challenges. We're all aware that the finance department, for example, is always in conflict with the sales department because they want very different things. She began these sessions because of those kind of problems. And what started as a micro alignment became a transformation in how her company runs and how her particular department approaches financial planning. She didn't change her job. She just changed how she does it. The compound effect of this is that each micro alignment on its own might seem small and insignificant, but when they compound, you get to a massive difference. The conversation that you initiate with your strength in mind, say for example of connection, might lead to a collaboration that changes your career. That boundary that you set to protect your values might inspire others to do the same. And that no you say to what drains you creates space for you and energy for you to say yes to the things that energize you. The challenge of following your compass is obviously the final component. Now let's be real. We all know that following our own compass as a woman isn't always easy. You face resistance, sometimes from others, but most often than not from yourself. So resistance can often sound like, oh, but you're being too emotional now. Or no, that's not the way we do it. And it might be something as simple as you need to be more strategic, where actually what you're trying to do is be relational. Sometimes you get things like you need to be more collaborative, when actually what you're trying to achieve is being decisive. Internal resistance from yourself might be things like, who am I to want to do this differently? Maybe I should just fit in. I don't really want to rock the boat. What if I fail? Resistance is normal. It's the sound of systems trying to keep you in familiar patterns. I'm going to repeat that. Resistance is the sound of systems trying to keep you in familiar patterns. But remember, every woman who has ever made a difference has faced this resistance. They moved forward anyway, compass in hand. So here's how to navigate some resistance. Firstly, big one, find your tribe. Find like-minded people. Surround yourself with women who get it, who also are navigating to their own compass. Document your wins. Keep a journal of moments where following your compass has led you to success. And trust me, this you will go back to when you're feeling a little down, and you'll be able to realize that you can. Start small. You don't have to transform everything at once. Little micro alignments, one at a time. Remember your why. When resistance is strong, always return to your values. Celebrate progress. Every little victory counts. So in closing, your compass is your contribution. And I want to remind you of that again. Let me leave you with this truth. Your compass isn't just for you. When you navigate your strengths and your values, you give other women permission to do the same. You become a lighthouse for others still searching for their own way. I think about the ripple effect of every woman who has chosen to follow her compass. The female CEO who prioritized psychological safety and formed her company's culture. The teacher who brought creativity back into the state standardized education. The mother who showed her daughters that success can look different. The entrepreneur who built a business around her values and proved it could thrive. Each of these women has faced moments when it would have been easier to navigate from someone else's map. But they chose their own compass. And in doing so, they didn't just find their own engagement and purpose, they created paths for others to follow. So here's what I've learned in 25 years of coaching and being in business for most of those years as well. You don't need to chase purpose like it's some far-off destination. It's not hiding in a different job, a different country, a different place, a different life. Purpose is already within you, in your strengths, your values, and your unique way of seeing and being in the world. The real power lies in 3 simple acts. Recognize your compass, those strengths and values that are uniquely yours. Trust your compass, even when the world suggests that you shouldn't. And follow your compass, one micro alignment at a time. Because when you do, something magical happens. Engagement stops being something you strive for and starts becoming something that's alive and that you live for. Purpose stops being something you're searching for and starts becoming something you embody. Success stops becoming something you chase and starts becoming something you define. So I want to end with where we began, with a bit of a twist. Remember the moment of deep engagement I asked you to recall. That feeling of being energized, of being alive, or being in flow. That is not a rare exception to be treasured. That's your compass pointing true north. That's what's possible when you align your daily activities with your strengths and values. That's what work and life in general can feel like when you stop navigating by everyone else's map and start trusting your own internal guidance system. My challenge to you is this. Leave here today with one micro alignment in mind, one small shift you want to make tomorrow to honor your strengths or values. Whatever it is that you decide to do it not because you should, but because your compass is pointing you in that direction. Remember, every time you follow your compass, you make it easier for another woman to follow hers. Every time you succeed at being yourself rather than despite yourself, you expand what's possible for all of us. Your strengths matter, your values matter, and your unique way of showing up in the world matters. The world doesn't need more women trying to navigate from borrowed compasses. The world needs women courageously following their own, creating workplaces, families, and communities that honor the full spectrum of human strength. So trust your compass, follow it bravely, and watch how your engagement and purpose light the way of others. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. May you leave here not searching for your path, but ready to create it, one authentic step at a time.